Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton, and on this episode, we're going to be talking a little Indianapolis Colts. A little turmoil, it seems, on the field going on. Not necessarily players at each other's throats, but boy, oh boy, some interesting play, to say the least. And joining me on this episode, I have someone that has a front row seat to all of it. That would be Mr. Stephen Holder from ESPN. What's going on, man?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? What's going on?
Doing great, doing great. We're going to get into the Colts and their start. But, of course, up first, we always have to do the get off your chest segment. And the Colts are somewhat involved in this and talking about starts of teams, and of course, there's fans out there that get super excited about their teams and they get super down about them as well. I'm talking about the teams that are 2-0 and the teams that are 0-2. Now, reading off the teams that are 2-0, we've got the Buffalo Bills, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Houston Texans, LA Chargers, Kansas City Chiefs, Minnesota Vikings, New Orleans Saints, Tampa Bay Bucks, and Seattle Seahawks. Now, for some of those teams, the excitement probably is a little valid because they're used to having good teams. Some of these teams, I'm like, hey, hold on now. It is the start of the season. There wasn't a lot of players playing in preseason, and maybe you're catching them at the right time. But right now, we don't know. So I would say, hey, maybe temper down the excitement. I don't know what to say about New Orleans right now. I mean, the offense is explosive, which I didn't expect. And they're 2-0. But, of course, one of those wins is versus Carolina, which we know they're not going to be good. So, it's a little empty bag there. So I would say, hey, maybe they're somewhere in between that 2-0 start, but not necessarily the gangbusters team that you think they are. That's probably going with the LA Chargers as well, even though they're probably a super physical team now with Jim Harbaugh as the head coach. Now, of course, the 0-2 teams, the sky's not falling. The sky's not falling for the Baltimore Ravens. It's not falling for the Cincinnati Bengals because they always start this way, the Cincinnati Bengals. The Colts, don't know. We're going to get into that later. Jaguars, interesting. And, of course, the Titans, right there, but critical mistakes. We already know who the critical mistake is being made by, but let's see. As far as the Denver Broncos, New York Giants, and the Panthers, yeah, we know what they are. We just know what they are. And as far as the LA Rams, man, can they get a healthy player? That's the biggest thing that's going on out there. You got Puka Nacua out. Now you got Cooper Kupp out. Wow. That's all I can say. But I would say this. For a lot of 2-0 and 0-2 teams, it's not as bad as you think it is, and it's not as great as you think it is. Just let the season roll out, maybe like a month or I would say at least 4 games. Then I'd say, hey, that panic button may go off a little bit louder than what it probably already is right now. Steven, you got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I do. In fact, I feel strongly, I always have felt strongly that you don't really know what you're dealing with until about 4 or 5 weeks into the season. And so if you look at it from this perspective, if your favorite team in the middle of the season wins 2 in a row, you would be very excited about that. But you also wouldn't throw a parade. You wouldn't say we're going to the Super Bowl. If they lost 2 in a row, you would be sick about that, right? But you also wouldn't say the season was over if they were competitive, for the rest of the season. So that's why a 2-game sample tells me nothing. I mean, no, not nothing. It tells us some things because certain things, if they're extreme, I think we have to take heed, right? Right? Good or bad. But generally speaking, you don't know who's good in the NFL until a month or so into the season, and we're not even close to that yet. So while we have some ingredients and we have some indicators right now, and that does tell us some things, I personally, from experience, have learned, like, all right, slow your roll, good or bad. We really don't know. And so we'll see. We will see. But again, the extreme outcomes, maybe we pay more attention to. But generally speaking, give it a month, give it 5 weeks or so, and then you have a better picture. Right now, we have a snapshot, and that's not enough.
Right, right. That is, of course, the get off your chest segment for this episode. Just kind of calm it down just a little bit. Let the first month of the season go by, before you start throwing ticker tape parades and things like that, and having, impromptu Frankie Beverly concerts. As Saints fans, that's what I'm talking about. But I understand. You show love to Frankie Beverly, but hey, y'all 12, not 16. Come on now. But speaking of extremes, we got to talk about this Colts run game defense. Good gracious, what is going on there? Josh Jacobs runs for 151 yards on 32 carries. The week before that, Joe Mixon, he runs for 159 yards on 30 carries. What exactly is going on with the Colts run defense?
Well, they've given up, I believe, 474 rushing yards in 2 games. That's the most they've given up in 2 decades, at least, in the first 2 games of the season. So they're reaching historic proportions. They're making history. Congratulations. I'm surprised by it. They were never the 85 Bears or expected to be the 85 Bears, but the strength of this team on paper coming into this season was the defensive line. Pretty good pass rush last season, pretty solid against the run. They were in the top third in run defense last season. I think allowed 4 yards per carry. This year, or so far at least, I think they're 5.2 yards per carry. That's not going to get it done. They're more than a yard per carry over last season's average. And if you think about that, when you extrapolate that into, say, over a number of carries, right? Say, 75 or 100 carries or so, in a couple games, whatever it is, that's 75 or 100 yards more over that time span. So that's a problem. And so the question becomes, okay, what is happening? What is it exactly? It's a couple things. Some of it is the scheme. They are getting out schemed. Certainly Matt LaFleur for the Packers did a great job on Sunday, with the run game that he developed and schemed, behind Malik Willis. I thought he did a great job with that. And the Colts, he stretched them out, which was, I thought, something that he probably saw on tape from the week before, stretched them out laterally, horizontally, and got to the edge a lot of the times, or cut back. Either way, you stretch them out horizontally, and that had poor results for the Colts. They have to fix that, and so that's the first issue. The second issue is just straight up man on man, just losing matchups, missing tackles. Like, you just can't get blocked out of the picture. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're getting blocked off the screen when I'm watching a game, that's a problem. And you got to win your matchups. It's just basic 101 Pop Warner level football. You got to win your matchups. They're not winning in many cases. And it's not going to get easier because DeForest Buckner, their all-pro defensive tackle, is hurt, and he may miss some time here. So they're going to have to dig and find a way to rectify this.
Yeah, definitely. Mr. Raekwon Davis probably will be stepping in there to fill those shoes probably. Of course, another issue with the team is the newly minted number 1 wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts, Michael Pittman Jr. Now, he has the most targets of any of the wide receivers with the Colts right now, but he only has 7 receptions for 52 yards on the season. Is that more of an issue with him getting open, or issue with the offense, or Anthony Richardson trying to figure things out right now?
All of the above. Not to be a cop-out answer, but it's all of the above. But I think that Michael Pittman, look, I don't make things about money necessarily, but when they pay you what they're paying him, $72 million or whatever it is, that says something about your standing as a player. So you have to rise above the circumstances. And while there have been a lot of plays where he was not able to make that play, and that's fine. No one's judging him on that. If the pass is not accurate, or the quarterback's under pressure and can't get a good attempt to you, whatever it might be, okay, that's understandable. But there's also instances like on Sunday where he dropped a perfectly thrown ball, and you have to make the plays that are there for you to make. especially when the team is struggling. You have to look to your best players to rise above whatever's happening around them and get their team set up for success. Now, they also could do a better job of setting Pittman up, to make plays. And I think he referenced that after the game when he said something like, we need to get back to calling our base plays, which I think is code for plays that are meant for me. But I think that's not so coded, in fact. But that doesn't mean he's wrong. I do think that he adds a level of toughness to the offense. He's a competitive player. When he gets going, they feed off of that. But he also, it's hard to talk your stuff when you're not doing your part, and he could be doing more within the context of what's happened already in these past 2 games.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting just to keep up with him and figure out, if he gets it going or not, or if, A.D. Mitchell gets it going or not. But right now, Alec Pierce is the leading wide receiver on this team. I don't think anyone had that on their bingo card coming into this year. So, do you really think that Alec Pierce can really keep up this type of performance so far? I mean, I knew the first game to the second game definitely was a drop off in terms of yards, but he's making his yards count any type of time he gets a opportunity. He's making it count for him.
Yeah, I've always liked Alec Pierce, and I thought that he was kind of a victim of the quarterbacks the Colts have had the last couple of years, who were not really prone to push the ball down the field. That was not their game. He had a 38-year-old Matt Ryan 2 years ago, who at some point, the arm strength goes, right? And that was kind of the end of the road for Matt. Last year, after Anthony Richardson got hurt in week 5 against Tennessee, as you know, Gardner Minshew takes over, and he was not looking for those deep shots. He just wasn't. And so that was, somewhat problematic for Alec Pierce, because his game, frankly, is, the deep ball in many cases and trying to stretch the field. So now he has a quarterback who has certainly all the arm strength in the world. Whatever he might lack elsewhere, he does not lack that. We know for sure. He also, arm strength is one thing. You also have to have the willingness and the gumption, to make those throws and take those shots. You got to be bold. And he is. Anthony Richardson is. So the other thing, though, I would not want to just put Alec Pierce in a box. He's done his job, I think, in the intermediate game and even somewhat the short game too, because that's where he has been lacking completely. You can't just be a one-trick pony. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to run all the routes. And with Josh Downs out these past 2 weeks, who really is their top slot receiver, Alec Pierce has had an opportunity to get involved in maybe a wider variety of routes. And I think he's done a good job with that. So I'm happy to see that. And it's something to build on. If the other guys get going, now that you really have something. So at least if you want to have full perspective, Alec Pierce playing at the level he's playing at, as you said, not something you expected. You do expect at some point Michael Pittman to be Michael Pittman. So if that can happen, if Josh Downs gets back and he can get going, there's light at the end of the tunnel here. I like their wide receivers. I actually think they have the best group that they've had in many years. But show me, don't tell me. Oh, it's my golden rule. And right now, they got to step up. And that includes, by the way, A.D. Mitchell, the young rookie from Texas, who I think has all the potential in the world, but very, very sloppy performance from him on Sunday. He needs to go back to the drawing board and learn from that, because that can't happen at all.
AD, just speaking to you, of course, you played at Cambridge High School, which is literally about 5-10 minutes from where I am in Nashville, Antioch area. So,
yeah.
You represent Middle Tennessee. I need you to go out there and represent us well. Jordan Mason is representing well for the 49ers from Middle Tennessee. I need you to do so as well. That's just a little message from me. But, what message the Colts were sending Sunday has me perplexed, and you talked about it on Twitter. The artist formerly known as Twitter. Let me say it that way. But the inexplicable, just actions of the Colts offense not getting Jonathan Taylor the ball down the stretch. I'm trying to figure out what exactly is that about. I mean, I understand you've got certain things you want to do. But Jonathan Taylor is the focal point of this offense. That is just known. Why does he not get the football when it counts? I mean, it's just inexplicable. I know it's inexplicable to you, but it's inexplicable to me too. Do you got any thoughts on that as to why? Did he try to explain as to why, Coach Steichen?
Yeah, so they were down 2 scores heading into the fourth quarter. Jonathan Taylor's last touch was the final play of the third quarter. So he did not touch the ball again. In fact, he did not play again. He was never in the game after the final play of the third quarter. So the reason for that, the stated reason, is that they were in sort of a hurry-up passing situation, and they were down 2 scores. That's true. They didn't really run the ball. They ran the ball, I think, 2 times in the fourth quarter. I actually went back and broke it down. So here, I'll read it to you. 21 offensive plays in the fourth quarter, no snaps for Taylor, 13 snaps for Trey Sermon, who is their backup running back, and another running back, Tyler Goodson. He had 8 snaps. So what was the story there? Okay, like I said, 2 runs. So they were never intent on running it. They were down 2 scores. I would argue this. Nothing else had worked on Sunday. Nothing. Okay. Now, what had worked was Jonathan Taylor averaging 8 yards a carry, literally. And so having him on the field at least presents that threat, I feel like. And I think when you get sort of too compartmentalized and you say, okay, we're in passing situations, so we're going to go with our passing, our running backs who are more well-versed in the passing game, even though that may be true. Jonathan Taylor, not a high-level receiver out of the backfield. He's not. His pass protection could be better for sure, right? He needs to take ownership of that and be better at it. That is absolutely true. That being said, that's 21 plays where your best offensive player was not on the field. If I'm the Green Bay Packers, that's a win. I don't think I think you're playing into their hands. The only guy who they were terrified by on Sunday is Jonathan Taylor. And he wasn't on the field. I'm not saying he should have played all 21 snaps. I just think that there is a happy medium there. You could even get him a throw out of the backfield, and you get that guy in space, and now all of a sudden he goes for 30. I mean, you eliminate that possibility. They ran it twice, by the way, in the fourth quarter with those backs. 2 carries for 0 yards.
Yikes.
Including what I think is the biggest cardinal sin, which was the very next play, the first play of the fourth quarter after Taylor departs. They had a 3rd and 1 around the plus 40-yard line or so. They try an option to the left, an option pitch to Sermon, and he gets stuffed for -4. I think the thinking there was, okay, we got 3rd and 1. If we don't make this, we'll go for it on 4th down. Well, then the thinking for me would be, okay, give it to Taylor and put him behind that big, expensive offensive line and get that 1 yard up the middle. And if you don't get it, then run the play again on 4th down. Get that 4th down. If they score a touchdown on that drive, it's a different game, and I actually think it plays into their hands. Now it's a 1-score game, maybe even a field goal deficit. So when they did not convert that 1st down without Jonathan Taylor on the field, now it's 4th and 4. They have to kick a field goal. They miss. That was the ball game right there. So anyway, I think they overthought it. But I'm just a little on me. Shane Steichen is definitely better at football than I am. But those are my thoughts.
Gotcha. It sounds like to me, coming into the season, offensively, he's kind of overthinking a few things and kind of trying to do a lot of things in a little bit amount of time instead of doing the bread and butter things that work and then expounding upon those. But that's just me from the outside looking in. I kind of get what you're saying. I get what you're saying as well. So it's kind of like we're almost saying pretty much the same thing at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think I understand. Look, I mean, when you're in a heavy passing situation, it does change things. I understand that. And they were, up tempo, all that. I just don't think that means you have to just have take a hard line and say, no, he doesn't play in these situations. I mean, he could play. Like you could make that decision. Like there's no rule that says he can't, right?
Right.
And I don't know. That's just my perspective on it. At least I think you add another element, you introduce another element to the defense if he's out there. Without him, I think you lose that.
Right. Well, they got another chance to get a W this weekend. It'll be against the Chicago Bears. We're going to get into that, starting with the Bears offense versus the Colts defense on Touring the AFC South right after this commercial break.
EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash are two of the best beard grooming products for men worldwide. They help promote growth, keep your beard moisturized and soft, and enhance your overall upkeep of your facial hair. And with the new promo code MPAFC10, you can get 10% off all these products. Just go to www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. Again, that's www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. And again, the promo code MPAFC10. Again, MPAFC10, where you can get 10% off any products except for beard boxes. So treat your beard better today by going to get these the EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash.
All right, and we are back on Touring the AFC South. And like I mentioned before the commercial break, we're going to talk Bears versus Colts. That is the next matchup for the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts defense, they'll be seeing the number one draft pick from this year's previous draft, Caleb Williams. Now, I'm pretty sure you've seen some of the highlights and some of the lowlights, of course, obviously. What do you make of Caleb Williams so far?
I think probably a lot of what you expect from a rookie quarterback. I do think that the expectations for him are really high because, I mean, I watched him play in college like most people, and he did things that most college quarterbacks can't and have not done. The thing about it is that a lot of the athletic feats that he had in college, he meets now in the NFL. He's being confronted by athletes who can match him athletically, and that's the game changer. So the plays you made in college, while he has pulled off some Houdini acts and gotten away from the pass rush, to his credit, his great credit, but then the finishing the play is a lot harder in the NFL, right? And so, you know, you get the first half of that equation. The second half is hard. So, okay, you can spin off of that 300-pound defensive tackle and stay on your feet. I'm impressed by that. Okay, but now what? And now you got to find an open man. Okay, that's a whole other challenge. So he's finding that, you know, he's going to have to certainly play a more conventional style. That's just a reality, and I don't think that's necessarily shocking. We should have expected that. I think it's too early really to draw conclusions because he is so green and it is so early and there is so much on his plate. But it's a great little reminder that this is the hardest position in the world to play, I feel like, in team sports. And all I can say is, you know, you just want to see progress from week to week and hope for the best.
Right. Now, of course, I've mentioned previously about the Colts' issues stopping the run. Well, they're going against an offensive line that has had some issues in their own right. They haven't necessarily blocked them up very well either. So in this game, one thing has got to break. Do you think that this is the game, maybe the get-right game for the Colts up front versus this Bears offensive line that has definitely had some issues blocking pass and run game?
I think this plays more into their hands to a degree. And so there's good and bad news. First of all, the Bears have not to this point committed to the run whatsoever. All right. Caleb Williams, I think, is averaging more than 30 attempts per game so far. I think he had 39 in his first game, if I'm not mistaken, against Tennessee. So this is going to be a game where they're going to put the ball in the air because that's what they've been doing. They've been behind somewhat too, so that's a factor. But anyway, they're probably going to be tilted more in the ratio to the pass. That hasn't been the case the first 2 weeks for the Colts defense. So that plays into their hands because I think they're right now, I think their pass rush is more effective than their run stopping. So that's good. The problem comes in where their secondary hasn't really been tested yet. And that is where we thought there were issues. That secondary is the area that coming into the season that most people were concerned about. So this Chicago Bears lineup of wide receivers is, to be respected. And I, including the tight end as well. So, I mean, I want to see how that group matches up because they really haven't had to be tested just yet, even though that Houston Texans group of wide receivers might be the best in the league because the run game was working in week one as well as it was for Houston. They were able to really lean on their run game and allowed C.J. Stroud to kind of pick his spots and when he threw the ball. So while he had success throwing the ball, that's not why the Colts lost. They lost because of the run defense. So, or in large part. So anyway, this is a different matchup for the Colts, an interesting one. It plays into their hands to one degree, but then, all right, as I said, this is a new test that they have not faced just yet at the back end of the defense.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when the back end of that defense for the Colts gets tested because without Juju Brents, there's really one guy that you think about that's maybe Kenny Moore in the slot. Other than that, it's open season back there.
And Julian Blackman. Yeah, Julian Blackman at safety missed this past game. We'll have to see whether he can get back. This week the next couple of days will be telling. But he's a key guy at safety, particularly for tight end matchups, and is also a good tackler. So they need him back in the worst way as well.
Definitely. They can't have Nick Cross averaging 15 tackles a game.
Oh,
that is unbelievable. That is if you're running the football. If you like running the football and you see that a safety is averaging 15 tackles a game, I know your eyes have to light up. They definitely have to light up. But of course, overall, I've got to ask, what do you think Gus Bradley does to try to at least adjust or help his defense? Because I know when his defenses, he usually lines up a certain way and he goes with it. He doesn't really do a lot of wrinkles and things like that. But he's got to do something, right?
We'll see. I mean, I liken this to the Tony Dungy approach years ago. Different defense, somewhat different defense, right? More of a cover two versus what the Colts are more of a base cover three. But the philosophy was this. The philosophy was we want to run a simplistic scheme and let playmakers make plays. It sounds good. I don't necessarily disagree with the philosophy, but those playmakers have to make the plays. They just are not. So you truly are dependent on your best players playing like your best players, and they have not. And the linebackers, Zaire Franklin, E.J. Speed, underwhelming to say the least. I think up front, Grover Stewart, who's normally a force. We've seen him against the likes of Derrick Henry over the years. He, I think, has been underwhelming as well. DeForest Buckner's been playing hurt. Now he's out. They have to, it is so dependent that the philosophy is built on those guys producing. If they don't produce, is your scheme enough to overcome the disparities? And so far, the answer is no. So I do think they have to add some complexity at some point here and figure out how they can not just make their scheme so predictable to run against. Because if they're running, outside zone and they're getting up on you at the line of scrimmage at the point of attack, if they're getting the best of you at the point of attack every single time, there's going to be a running lane. That is just is not that difficult. All right, you got to win. And they're not winning right now. And I'm talking about up front in the trenches, which is where they have built this team to win. They built this team to win in the trenches, and they're getting their butt kicked in the trenches.
Yeah, definitely. It's what it looks like right now. We're going to flip over to Colts offense versus Bears defense. But first, we're going to take another quick commercial break on touring the AFC South.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
All right, and we are back on touring the AFC South. Like we left off, talking about the Colts defense, Bears offense. Now we got to flip it over. Colts offense versus Bears defense. Now, the Bears defense can definitely be stubborn. They've definitely kept them in some games so far. So what do you expect the game plan to be in this one? Because they're not necessarily the easiest to run against, especially they've proven that in the first couple games.
Yeah, I mean, I know Matt Eberflus very well. He was the defensive coordinator here. I know how he thinks. The Colts know how he thinks. His philosophy is very straightforward. We're going to stop the run first. He's an old school guy, and so he doesn't want to let you run. That's the bottom line. And then he's going to, play coverage on the back end, and you got to, kind of make plays in front of that coverage. So it might require some patience from Anthony Richardson and kind of take what the defense gives you. They want you to kind of, mount long drives. So hoping for the turnover, that kind of thing. So it can be effective when executed properly. But I do think the Colts will still try to run it. I mean, Jonathan Taylor is still their best weapon. There's no question about that. And he has run against tough fronts in the past. This is nothing new. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be a good battle up front. The Colts offensive line has been a little slow starting right now. But I thought in the second half on Sunday, they finally kind of got the upper hand in the run game and created some holes. And they've held up against the pass rush, I think, decent for the first two games as well. So I think the offensive line can handle themselves in this game. The question is going to be, can Anthony Richardson, can he be patient if the Bears play that, two deep safety setup? If that's their coverage, can he be patient and maybe opt for the check down when they take away the deeper throws? I know he wants to be aggressive. Shane Steichen definitely wants to be aggressive. So they work in tandem, but this may not be, at least philosophically, this may not be a game where they can do that. So it's going to require the young quarterback to kind of play within himself and take what the defense gives him.
All right. I gotcha. Now, of course, you don't have to necessarily, I wouldn't say you necessarily have to worry as much about the tight end so far, because ultimately the Bears have kind of game planned the tight end out of the offense is what it looks like, because Cole Kmet is like, he's out there, but he's blocking, and he's not really a blocking tight end. You got Mercedes Lewis, the ageless Mercedes Lewis, out there, and they're barely using him to block, which I would think that would be his best asset at this point. And then you got Gerald Everett that basically is there, and they're using him to block too. And I'm like, okay. So in this game, I mean, you can probably expect the Bears to probably game plan the tight ends out. So, I mean, Julian Blackmon, if he doesn't play, he might not be missed quite as much in this game.
Well, that's also true for the Colts, because their tight ends are just kind of, they're there. I can say that.
Yeah.
that's about all I can say right now. They're not a big part of the game plan either. So, and it's interesting because one of my recent pieces for ESPN.com was about how the tight ends are taking over the league and how this is like this era of tight ends. And then here locally I cover the Colts, and it's like tight ends for them, it's kind of like, we like tight ends, I guess.
Right. Yeah, it's funny.
So,
it is
dichotomy.
It is funny.
Yeah. So, well, we'll see. I do think, though, they have their hands full. The Colts will have their hands full just, with those talented receivers as it is. So we'll see how that goes.
Right. And then, of course, I'm looking at some of the matchups that Anthony Richardson is going to see in terms of his wide receivers versus the Bears defensive backs. I mean, you got Jayon Johnson versus Michael Pittman Jr., which that ought to be pretty physical. I expect a personal foul between one of those two in this game. I expect it because both of them are physical guys that don't back down. Stevenson versus Alec Pierce ought to be interesting just because, of course, neither one was really talked about as playing well to start the season or thought about to play well to start the season, or both are playing well. And it's just going to be just interesting to see how Kevin Byard relies on that AFC South experience going against this Colts team. So, as far as the secondary and the matchups there, I mean, what do you expect to see out of that versus, the Colts versus this Bears secondary, which is probably the best secondary they've faced so far to me?
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see how they match up. And I think a big part of the success or failure for the Colts also will be, what Shane Steichen can come up with. He is, I think, going to really challenge himself and his staff this week to really come up with some winning schemes, And I thought last week or this past Sunday against the Packers out-schemed them. Matt LaFleur won, and Shane Steichen came out on the short end. I expected a much more creative offensive attack. They didn't run Anthony Richardson. I think there was one designed run for him. I'm not suggesting he should run the ball all day, but you can't draft a 6'4", 250-pound quarterback who has the athleticism of LeBron James and then not use that. That was baked into the cake. You said you were going to use him as a runner. It's too big of a weapon. I think they have to include that in the game plan this week. It brings in that other element for the defense that they have to account for. When you don't use it, you are playing into the defense's hands. So I anticipate we will see at least a little bit more of that and just use the full repertoire of Anthony Richardson this week because they're 0-2. All right, you ain't got time to waste. So now is not the time to hold back, in my estimation.
Right. It's going to be interesting just seeing that Bears defense versus this Colts offense and to see how that kind of develops. And, on the flip side, seeing if the which department in terms of offenses and defenses for the Colts and the Bears actually step up and actually make the plays for these teams to actually get on the board. The Bears to get on the board again for a win or for the Colts to get a win on the board. So it'll just be interesting to see the Colts and the Bears this Sunday. That'll be fun to watch. Now, of course, we're done breaking down the games, but we don't end with just breaking down games. We have a game at the end of the show. It's 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. Stephen Holder, are you ready?
Ready as I can be.
All right, we're going music. Camp Lo, Lucchini. That song, I love that song. But or Renee by the Lost Boys. Which song are you taking?
Oh man, Renee by the Lost Boys. Only because music, old music, throwbacks. They take you back to where you were in your life at that time. Mm-hmm. And I think I was, maybe a freshman in college. So I have a lot of fond memories. Got out of the house for the first time. Oh man, those were great days, man. So. Yeah, I miss coming home, coming back to the dorm room after class and turning on Rap City and just, not doing homework and all that good stuff. Yeah, I mean, listen, the academics didn't go well freshman year, but I had a great time. I'll put it that way.
You sound like my freshman year at UT Martin, man. That was me. That was me. Let's see. We got movies. We got He Got Game or Coach Carter. Which movie are you taking?
Ooh. I like He Got Game. I'm a Ray Allen fan. You can't go wrong with Denzel. It's a little bit of I think it's one of the most unique roles Denzel has ever had. I'm not saying it's like his best acting. I don't know. I'm not the expert on that, but it was a very unique role for Denzel. He's usually playing, some kind of a hero or a cop or, some sort of, larger than life figure. And I mean, this was just, I don't know that I can think of too many roles where Denzel like this, ex-con just getting out of jail. It was a good performance though, I thought. So I love he got game for sure.
Okay. All right. Coach Carter was definitely an interesting one for me.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got 2 wide receivers with AFC South ties. Which one are you taking? Andre Johnson, or like as I like to call him, Beats by Dre, or Jimmy Smith?
Ooh. Jimmy Smith was underrated, man.
Very.
I think now, but I am going to give the slight edge to Andre Johnson. First of all, okay, my man is a Miami Hurricane, as am I. So, okay, bias. Yes, bias. I actually I wrote my first story about Andre Johnson because I came up, working in South Florida. I wrote my first story about Andre Johnson, I believe his senior year of high school, when I was just a intern reporter covering high school football down there. So I have long years of ties to Andre Johnson. I also covered him at the University of Miami. By the way, one fun fact, his high school quarterback at high school, I think at Miami Senior High, was Roscoe Parrish was the quarterback of that high school team, throwing it to Andre Johnson. And they didn't have a lot of other players, but they had those 2 guys. They went to the playoffs on the backs of those 2 guys alone, with the rest of the team really not being that great a team. Another fun fact, Andre played basketball for that team, for that school, which was a Florida powerhouse. Steve Blake at one point was one of his high school teammates. So I got all kinds of fun facts on Andre Johnson.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just imagining Roscoe Parrish, that little bitty guy throwing the football to that big guy wide receiver.
Imagine him running around playing Sandlot with the ball in his hands.
Wow.
It's crazy.
I bet it sounds like it. Just imagining it sounds that. But we're gonna go to another former Miami Hurricane in the next one. Who is the better Colt running back for you, Edgerrin James or Marshall Faulk?
So Marshall Faulk, my Colts memories of Marshall Faulk are vague because it was so long ago. But I would say I think I like Edgerrin a little more, not because of the Miami ties, even though for sure, like there's a bonus point, right? But I just think like the edge, not, pun intended, I guess. I didn't intend it, but let's just go with it. The edge that he ran with, like the physicality he ran with, like he wanted to punish you at the end of that run. There were times where he would, live to fight another day and get out of bounds, but Edge ran hard, man. And I think when you had to go tackle him, you felt like you had played a football game. And I don't know that from experience, but it looked hard. So I just remember, that's what I remember. When I think about Edgerrin James, I think about, man, imagine having to tackle that guy just because of the determination that he ran with. Now, Marshall Faulk was a smooth runner, man. Like I love Marshall Faulk, his game. I remember his days with the Rams, obviously. But just in terms of the Colts context, I think I take Edgerrin James just a little bit.
Yeah, their running styles, I kind of compare it to music. Marshall Faulk, more jazz, contemporary.
Yeah.
And I would say Edgerrin James, a little bit of R&B with a little bit of Trick Daddy in there. A little bit of, a little bit of Rowdy in there.
Yeah, so, yeah. That's like a Wu-Tang concert, It's just
yeah, for sure. All right. Now I got to ask you, of course, I'm going to tie this all into week 2 in the NFL. Which was more surprising, the Saints blowing out the Cowboys or the Eagles losing in the last minute to the Falcons?
That's a tough one. I would say, now, I was greatly surprised by the Cowboys outcome. But then again, it's the Cowboys. And you never know what to expect with the Cowboys. Like from week to week, I have no idea what they're going to do, right? That's what we know about the Cowboys just generally. Mm-hmm. I think I watched that game on Monday night, and I had no inkling, that I didn't even know how the Eagles could lose the game. I was sitting there falling asleep, and I'm thinking, okay, I should just go to bed because this thing's over. When the Eagles were closing in on the end zone, I'm thinking, okay, well, they're going to run the clock out. Like, how are they even going to get the ball back with any time to actually do anything? But the effortless way the Falcons went down the field, I was flabbergasted by it. I was like, look, I respect Kirk Cousins, and I think he's an underrated quarterback at times. But my God, I mean, the Eagles, they gotta have a come to Jesus moment, because that was embarrassing. From the clock mismanagement to the non-existent defense, they collapsed. That was an utter collapse. It's on the coaches, it's on the players, it's on everybody. Everybody got a hand in that one. So that's a tough one to come back from. That was just a bad loss. The Cowboys had a bad day, and that can happen. But I think that is more easily explained than just having the game in your hands and literally giving it away. That's not okay.
Yeah, it was. Honestly, I did miss the actual comeback because I thought the game was over. I'm like, cool. And then I look back, I'm like, hold up, the Falcons won this game? And I watched it back, and I was like, wow, this happened. And then with the Cowboys, I liken them to Forrest Gump. The Forrest Gump statement, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. That's what I think when I watch the Dallas Cowboys every single time. You never know what you're going to get out of them. That's 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. You are off the hot seat. We have reached the end of the show. Mr. Stephen Holder, I want to thank you for coming on the show. If you want to tell everyone what you're working on and where they can find you on these internet streets.
Yeah. Working on a story about kind of what we talked about earlier, just, why, or can we, how it's unfair to expect Anthony Richardson to play hero ball, and that he has to have the space to make the mistakes that are typical of young quarterbacks. So, just kind of try to put that into context and add some details on that. And you can find me at Holder Stephen on X, HOLDER, Stephen with a PH. And got your Colts updates for you there. So appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And of course, I am Mike Patton. I'm the host of Touring the AFC South. You can find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter at Mike Patton 82. That's MikePatton 82 on the artist formerly known as Twitter. Word to Prince, one of the greatest artists of all time. Of course, you can also find me on Instagram and Threads at that's THA, not THE, _general_MP. You can find me there. Of course, you can find Touring the AFC South on YouTube with the Mike Patton Network. You can also find it on all your listening platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, you name it, we are there. I want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out. Peace.